The Beastmen will be the next faction in Total War Warhammer as part of a DLC that's going to release on July the 28th. They will be playable in the Grand Campaign and they'll have even a mini campaign as well. So let's talk about them. The Beastmen are a horde faction that draws heavily from the Warriors of Chaos. They will spawn close to the Empire, I believe, somewhere down in the south, and are supposed to use the forests to their advantage with a new movement stance in the campaign map that allows them to move undetected through the woods, which is very, very sneaky. Now, I'm sure their campaign will not be the easiest. It should be somewhat similar to the Chaos Warriors, at least in the starting bits, with having one army that you have to micromanage with very well in order to survive. It seems like the Beastmen will get 2+ legendary lords. Now, before I get into this any further, this is like purely based on stuff read on Reddit. I'll link the Reddit post on in the description, and yeah, it's mostly speculation. I'm sorry, guys, I have to get caught in on the hype. But yeah, the Beastmen will most likely have more than 2 legendary lords. Gorthor, who seems to be their main man, head honcho, similar to Archaon, looks like he'll ride a chariot, which means he'll be quite a bit of a glass cannon, I think. But that sounds really, really cool. I'm sure the strong micro players in multiplayer can probably put him to great use, greater than any other land-based melee lord. I'm not going to compare him against something like Luan Leonker on his Pegasus, or Karl Franz on Deathclaw, but he'd probably do a shit ton of damage very, very quickly. So not much of a tank, much more of a glass cannon. The other lord is Khazrak, the One Eye, who seems to be the focus of the mini campaign. No shield, it seems, two-handed weapons, looks pretty beastly. Probably is much more of a support general with buff spells and the sort, I think. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, of course, but that's what it seems to me. The Beastmen also get their own lore of magic, which will be included in the DLC, of course, which is called Lore of the Wild, which, from what I've read on the tabletop game and on Reddit, seems to have a few ineffective direct damage spells and concentrates more towards buffing friendly units. There's a spell called Savage Dominion, which sounds really fucking cool. It can apparently summon a really powerful unit like a giant to fight for you in the middle of the battle. I don't think they'd add something exactly like this. I'm not sure if CA would do it. If they do, it better cost a fuck ton of mana, because wow, that sounds insanely powerful. We all know that a giant can almost take down an entire army by itself, and especially if the enemy brings an army that is more set to deal with the regular Beastmen units and not a single large target like a giant, then one cast of Savage Dominion could literally turn the tide of battle completely. But anyway, speaking of armies, let's look at what we know of the unit so far and get down to some juicy, almost completely unfounded speculation on how strong or weak they will be. The Beastmen roster looks one that is pretty close to the Chaos Warriors, while sharing the low-tier infantry feel of the Orcs. So something like swarming the enemy with a lot of cheap infantry units, while also having a monstrous infantry and pure monsters similar to the Warriors of Chaos. The Ungors are the lowest tier infantry of the Beastmen. It seems like there will definitely be a version of the Ungors with bows, forming probably a really cheap but poor archer contingent similar to like the Goblin archers. But there also may be an infantry version with a sword and shield. There's not too much to write about these guys. They seem pretty generic. Think of them like, a humble pack of goblins. Won't deal much damage, but can be useful to grab a lot of enemies and let them swarm the Ungor and let the Ungor die, while you get your better troops to move into more advantageous positions. I would most likely bring a couple of these guys for sure, though. Low tier infantry always have a part to play in Total War Warhammer. The Gors are the lower mid-tier infantry version of the Beastmen. Think something a bit stronger than the Orc Boys, but probably a bit weaker than the Orc Biggins. That's just the way I think of it. Maybe it's something completely different. Anyways, they're the lower mid-tier infantry version of the Beastmen, and they should have little in the way of armor or shields since they're supposed to dual-wield weapons. Dual-wielding weapons sounds like something a glass cannon unit would have, and sure enough, that's exactly what they're supposed to be. Fast, no armor, good charge. They sound a lot like the Foxmen from Rome 2. But, we all know how amazing the Foxmen are. But with A, the fact that spaghetti lines aren't possible in Total War Warhammer, which makes infantry charges not all that effective in terms of raw damage, and B, that infantry in Total War Warhammer, except for maybe goblins and definitely zombies, seem to be a whole lot sturdier than cheap infantry of past Total War games. I don't really think they will reach the heights of something like Falksman. Still, they sound like good units to clear the front line, and if I were to jump into a match blindly with the Beastmen, not knowing anything about their roster, I would probably pick 2 or 3 of these guys. The elite form of the Gors are the Bestigors. 10,000 points for creativity there. I mean, I'm not sure why the Ungors weren't called the Poopy Gors and the Gors weren't called the Decent Gors, but oh well. The Bestigors are well armored and seem to carry, again, two-handed weapons. They will almost definitely be a stronger version of the glass cannon Gors, but at least in the tabletop, they seem to have an ability that lets them seize the banner of any enemy they defeat. This translates to them getting better in battle as they continue fighting, which will be a great ability on paper, but I have my doubts on CA making it truly effective. As we know, a similar ability is already present for the Black Coach, but it hardly ever seems to really show through. I'm all for strong glass cannon units though, and they sound like a great fun set of troops. It of course could be that more types of units are added in by CA. Most likely there'll be versions of 2 or 3 of these infantry units that have great weapons, maybe something that's more geared towards anti-large. But yeah, let's anyways move on to the monsters. The most badass looking unit for the Beastmen, and I think in Total War Warhammer, seems to be the Cygor, or the Cyclops Gore. Of course, one eye. They have an ability called Ghost Sight, which is supposed to make them especially strong against wizards, units with magical attacks, and apparently anything with ward protection. So, Luan Leon Curve fangirls beware. Oh yeah, they also hurl giant rocks at enemies. Yeah, just a little thing. Yeah, these guys sound like they're awesome. Probably would pick at least one of them against a magic heavy faction like the Vampire Counts, or in the current state of Total War Warhammer, anything except the dwarves. But yeah, I would probably bring more depending on how OP/inexpensive they are. The only flying unit available to the Beastmen are the Jabber Slights, which can also be summoned by the super powerful spell Savage Dominion that I was talking about earlier, at least in the tabletop. Or at least from what I know of the tabletop. Now, I would expect them to have the standard, causes fear, causes terror trait, but especially considering that they are the only flying unit in the Beastmen roster, I don't see them to be too strong of a unit. Anyways, according to the tabletop, they should have poison attacks, and more interestingly, they should also cause damage to the units that attack them. So just straight up reciprocate damage that it is dealt to it. I would definitely expect these units to have relatively low leadership, something similar to the Terrorgeist, if they do have such abilities. The Minotaurs are monstrous infantry and seem to be 9 soldiers per unit, as can be seen by the screenshot that I hopefully have put up in the video right now. They are supposed to have an even deadlier charge than the Beastmen infantry, but they are also much more glass cannony. Very quick, but probably zero armor, very poor armor, little to no shields, I would expect, and low morale. I think these guys would probably be used, if I were to use them, I'd probably use them on the flanks to crush enemy cavalry as support troops. Think of them like the Horsehewers from Total War Attila, just units that have straight up such high armor piercing damage and great charge bonus that, that even if, actually, a Horsehewer is probably not the best comparison. Maybe something, again, just like a Foxman. The Oathsworn from Total War Attila. The ones that have the falxes and just cost a whole lot. They are very, very glass cannony, and they just straight up slaughter any unit that gets into contact with them. So even in Total War Attila, they are also used a lot just to support your cavalry. Just get a charge in and then bring the Oathsworn, and then they'll just cleave through everything. But yeah, that's exactly what I expect these guys to be like. Just support troops to crush the enemy cavalry on the flanks and then jump into the rear of the enemy main line. They most likely also cause fear and terror, and would also most likely destroy all mid-tier infantry, no problem. If they have low melee defense, though, I don't think they would be able to last too much or too long against infantry units that swarm them, which again lends to the fact that they should be used on the flanks. But they might also have the berserk ability, which of course means that you won't be able to control them, but they won't have any of their stamina depleted, which means that they are going to stay forever fresh in battle. They are quick and deadly, and I would 100% bring at least 2 of them because they're fucking minotaurs, dude. That sounds so awesome. The Beastmen also get access to Chaos Giants and Gorgons, which are basically roided up minotaurs, and instead of 9 they'd probably be just 1 in number per unit. But apparently they would also have regeneration, at least according to the tabletop. Besides this, the Beastmen roster looks pretty similar to the Chaos roster, with access to chariots, warhounds, and raider javelin cavalry. They look like a shitload of fun, and I'm really super down to play a proper glass cannon faction in Total War Warhammer and consequently get my ass handed to me. Hope you guys enjoyed this sort of video. Let me know if you want to see more, and until next time guys, peace.